Hi, everyone. Welcome to the In Climate session, marketing session. We have a lot of people coming in already. While we're waiting for more people to join, we like to start these with everybody putting where they're calling in from or joining us from in the chat so we can kind of see where everyone's at. And then a little bit of housekeeping. We have, if there's a large audience. We had a lot of registrants. So if you have questions for the panelists, please enter them in the Q&A box because the chat's going to be going the whole time and it'll be easier for us to collect and compile them. And we will do a Q&A session at the end. And I think people are still coming in, but I do think, is everyone ready to get started? Okay, so we'll start with some introductions. So my name's Kristen Shaw. I am a marketer for Terra.do, and I am also the National Marketing Chair for Cleantech Open, which is a cleantech accelerator. My co-host today is Elizabeth Mackay. She's joining us from EV Energy. Then we have Anusha. I'm gonna try my best. So Sethuraman, I messed it up. I'm sorry. You have to
No,
say
it's totally fine.
she's the founder of Once Upon a Climb. Then we have Eli Panken from Arcadia, and we have Lauren Scolnic from Modern Energy. I think a really great way to start is to have you guys kind of introduce yourselves, tell us where you're working, what you do. Anusha, do you want to start off?
Sure, yeah. So I have been in marketing for many, many years, 18 plus years, probably been with startups for the longest time. Went through an IPO and acquisition, spent a few years at Microsoft, and then I've been VP marketing at different early stage startups in climate and AI. And then I branched out about a year and a half ago to just consult on my own with different climate as well as AI startups, and I help them with their marketing, strategy, messaging, positioning, etc. And my company is called Once Upon a Climb. So if you want to go learn more about it, there's a website and you can always find me on LinkedIn. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Eli, if you want to go next, I'm going in order on my screen.
Sure thing, no problem. Hi, everybody. I'm Eli. I lead product marketing at Arcadia, which is a climate tech company that's focused on both community solar and utility data access. I've been doing the product marketing, customer marketing thing for about 7 years now, and I'm based in New York City. So if you're New York based, please let me know. Please reach out on LinkedIn. Looking forward to talking with and at all of you.
Thank you, Eli. And Lauren.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lauren Scolnic. I'm the head of communications and marketing at Modern Energy. We are a clean energy company focused on the energy transition, specifically dedicated to investing in, scaling, and operating renewable energy companies from green hydrogen to industrial solar. And I'm calling in today from Durham, North Carolina, which is our headquarters. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, so I think we have a lot of questions today and a lot of information to go through, so I'm going to jump right in. So the first question that I'd like to ask each of you is what inspired you to shift your career focus to climate? What brought you here to where you are now? We can go in reverse order. Lauren, do you want to start?
Sure, happy to. So I've always been interested in the intersection between energy and policy. It's actually something I studied in graduate school. But when I graduated about 15 years ago during the financial crisis, there were only a handful of companies in renewable sector actually hiring communications and marketing people. I remember Opower was one of them. So I ended up working in public affairs. I also worked a lot in corporate communications for global agencies for a better part of the decade. And had a handful of energy clients, none of whom were renewable clients. And then 4 years ago, Modern's team reached out to me to ask if I'd consider becoming their first in-house person. And initially I was like, this is a startup. I don't think it's for me. I'd only worked for Fortune 500 type companies and clients and on big teams, but I was really intrigued and the team was great. And so I said yes, and here we are today.
Amazing, amazing. So Eli, what inspired your journey into climate?
Yeah, a really good question and something that I'm still polishing the answer for. So I've been working in B2B software for, since I graduated school and especially in product marketing, a lot of what I'm focused on is pitching the value and why something is the best possible solution to a problem. Um, and as I kind of kept going through my career, I was working on solutions that I felt were need to haves. And so I decided to make the jump into climate. By way of Terra, to focus on solutions that are need to haves, and focus on things that are important to act on now versus later. And was lucky enough to end up at Arcadia through a number of connections and a lot of outreach and networking. And I will say it's been a, a learning experience every single day because there's always something new to learn in the climate and energy space.
Agreed. Anusha, how about you?
Yeah, I can go. So, I think inspiration for working on climates, I've always kind of personally just led a very sustainable lifestyle as much as possible. And I don't know why I didn't switch to climate like years and years ago. But eventually I was just like, I have two kids, and just thinking about the future that you're going to leave for your children, I think is what really got me into like, why can't I spend all of my time just working on climate? And I did the Terra program 3 years ago. And that's sort of like spurred me to, I was like, okay, just a crash course on jargon, terminology, knowledge, etc. And then worked for a startup. And then I just took a break after that, and I started getting these consulting projects. I was like, why not? And here I am giving that a go. So
Nice. Very nice. All right. So I want to stick with you, Anusha. I have a question. So are there any distinct differences in marketing climate solutions compared to other industries? And what skills do marketers need to excel in the climate industry? And I think, focusing on like how you work with your clients and the types of requests that you get.
yeah. So I come from a product marketing background, and no matter which product I worked on, whether in tech or AI or climate, I've always had or strived to have a good understanding of the product and worked to develop that understanding. And I think the same holds for the climate sector. It's like working on a new product, and you need to have a good understanding of the product, especially, in the kinds of things that I do, whether it's developing marketing strategy or focusing a lot of messaging and positioning. I think having a good knowledge of the product has really been useful. And this is something that I've done not just in climate, but even outside of that. So I feel like overall, lots of transferable skill sets. Climate companies essentially need to do the same thing, reach audiences using the channels available to them. So knowing channels, knowing audiences, where they spend time, online, offline, like these are all skill sets that any marketer across any industry needs to have. And I think the same holds for climate. This is what I've seen in the last 3 years too. I think it's a very similar, and especially if it's B2B or B2C, I think that is also like something that you can bring to the table, whether you've worked with a lot of B2B companies or B2C companies. Climate has a lot of companies in both of these sectors.
Yes, definitely. So Lauren, kind of playing off of her answer, how do the key audiences and messaging differ for climate-related products versus products or services compared to other sectors?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I think just to back up for a second, so our portfolio at Modern, it consists of several different what we call platforms. Some of them focus on green hydrogen, some are industrial solar development in Texas. One platform is focused on fleet electrification, one on distributed solar generation in Brazil. So when you think about all of those different like platforms, they all have different messages and different audiences. But at the end of the day, I think you can kind of group these audiences into kind of a few buckets. First, they're usually B2B instead of B2C, as Anusha said. Our audiences are typically either kind of future customers, the media, employees, both current and future, capital providers, and regulators. So I think and I feel like no matter where you're coming from, every sector is going to be unique. And even if you're coming from let's say, a different sector, or even in the same sector, you're still going to have to learn the lingo and have to learn all the technical terms that the industry is using. So it is a learning curve, but I think that there are definitely skills that you can apply from other sectors.
Yeah, I agree. The lingo is really important. It's something that helps you not just when you have the job, but while you're interviewing and while you're looking. The lingo can be a little bit different. Okay, so Eli, what do you think is different about the internal and external stakeholders in the climate industry? And do they impact kind of your strategy?
Yeah, I'm going to keep pulling the thread here of it's not all that different. It's just a little bit different. Um, in terms of like the people that I talk to internally, it would be the same at a, productivity tool, B2B software company, as well as someone that I talk to at Arcadia, very closely interfacing with product teams, the greater marketing team, operations, customer success, sales. It all kind of looks very similar to me. The biggest sort of learning curve or new internal and external stakeholder that I've learned to keep in the loop is from a policy perspective. We have a very very skilled, very fun to work with policy team here at Arcadia, who provide me and provide the whole company with a lot of perspective as to what's going on state by state, nation by nation. And I think when it comes to the strategy for like a go-to-market or for a new product launch, figuring out how policy affects that and and understanding its influence on the decision making is the biggest change in how I've run strategy.
Yeah, I think I'll interject my own here. For me, the skill set I had to learn for internal stakeholders is I had to learn a whole new skill set to working with people from academic backgrounds. Like I had to learn a whole new way to communicate with them, a whole new way to present information, a new way to listen. Like that was one of my challenges. Anusha or Lauren, did you have anything to add to what Eli said as far as like stakeholders and how they influence what you're doing?
I think one of the companies I worked at was a hardware company, which is not something I've really done much in the past. And that was, like you said, extremely different. You're working with these different audiences when you're selling hardware and software combined. So I think really it's almost, I would still stick to my original thing around, your skill sets are transferable because no matter which company you go to, ultimately you're still going to have to learn something new about the company, about the key people inside that company and also their audiences, and also about the product itself. And I think that's the same case for climate too. You have to spend some time doing that initial research and learning about it. And in my case, I do this like across multiple different clients. So there's like the opportunity for me to also learn about different problems, whether it's in the hydrogen space or the carbon credit space. So it's like varied.
Okay, so next question is for everyone, and it's a fun question. So can you share any examples of marketing campaigns that were effective, that you were excited about doing, and what do you think made them effective? Hard question, but good one.
I'm happy to jump in first. Hi. One campaign, and this is not ours, but I'm going to plug them anyway, is the Rewiring America campaign. They have done such a beautiful job bringing incredible information to consumers about what tax credits and what other sorts of options are available for the home electrification and the electrification space overall. They've done it in a compelling and funny way, and just really kind of striking that right balance between policy and digestible content. Really love them.
Yeah. Eli?
Yeah, I can think of one that we've run internally, or not internally, but here at Arcadia. There was a policy passed in California called SB 253. SB just stands for Senate bill, but it has to do with, and I don't want to quote it incorrectly, but it's California's rule for climate disclosure that impacted public and private companies with $1 billion more or more in revenue, as long as they operated in California. Now California is requiring that those companies have to report on their emissions if they do business within California. So we at Arcadia saw that as an opportunity to tie some of our utility data products to that sort of compelling event. And I think that the piece that I want to convey here is that there will continue to be compelling events in the world of climate and in the world of how people and companies are reacting to climate. And so when it comes to building a good marketing campaign, try and build it around, what is your product offering and what is the policy or change that is enforcing people to make a change that your product directly helps with. That's what we did along the SB 253. We built content and email campaigns and tried to direct companies who do business in California to start thinking about how they measure their utility usage. And we saw some good success.
Nice. Yeah, and that's the great thing about the climate sector is it's always changing and the need is evolving at a rapid pace. So I think that's exciting. Anusha, do you have any examples?
Yeah, I can share a couple. One these are not ones I worked on, but in my swipe file as like, hey, as a marketer, if you want to have a swipe file and some examples to look at or go back to. So in the B2B space, the Salesforce Net Zero Cloud, I think, did a pretty good job of promoting their whole campaign using all the usual means. I think nothing crazy different or anything, but they did a good, effective job of reaching their audience and selling this. And the other one in the B2C space that I really liked from way back 2011 or something was this Patagonia ad, Don't Buy This Jacket, that they ran in the New York Times on Black Friday. I really liked that one because I think they were really holding true to their values of sustainability and responsibility. And not only did it help potentially increase sales with the right kind of customers for them, but also really cemented customer loyalty. So those are a couple of my faves.
Nice.
I love that one with the opt-out Black Friday, right? It's a great campaign.
Totally, yeah.
One other campaign that's coming to mind right now, also, this is less a campaign and more really good thought leadership and communication strategy within our space. So among energy transition investors of early stage, developers of clean energy assets, I think that Jigar Shah has done a particularly good job of thought leadership. Also, the folks he was at Generate Capital before the DOE loan program. And I think also the Energy Impact Partners, Shil Khan and his podcast back in the day, I think that they were like the two top podcasts when I first joined this space. So yeah, I think that they've done a really good job around thought leadership, especially early on. Now there's a lot of podcasts.
There's a lot, yeah. A lot of good ones, but a lot for sure. Okay, so let's move on. I think another thing that comes up, not just with marketers in the climate space, but with marketers in general, but more so in the climate space. Anusha, can you discuss any ethical considerations or challenges that marketers face when promoting a climate solution? Because we have that balance between like stay mission driven, but drive revenue, hit investor expectations and goals. It's a fine line to walk.
Yeah. No, I think I feel very strongly about this. I used to work at a responsible AI startup. And again, the whole ethics around AI was pretty big. And as their head of marketing, I was like very concerned about making sure that we're talking about this right way, we're talking about the right things. And I think as marketers in general, we're always talking to customers and prospects. That job falls on us. And it's extremely important because we're establishing that trust with customers. And there's this whole concept of greenwashing, of course, ways in which I try to like avoid things like that is just being as honest as possible and talking about what you're actually doing rather than futuristic things, and making sure that it's supported with data wherever possible. So if you have data to support your marketing campaigns or strategies, like use data, I think that really shows the transparency and honesty. behind it. Sometimes also there can be a tendency to maybe oversimplify things. But I would say like just making sure you view your audience as smart and savvy, and then sharing things transparently and honestly, again, without oversimplifying, but without also complicating it too much, finding that right balance and being as honest as possible. There's also, of course, all these certifications and things going around that you can potentially do. Some people have started calling themselves a public benefit corporation, which shows that you're not a nonprofit, you're still a for-profit, but then you exist not only for profit, but also to generate social good, and being responsible and sustainable is a part of your hardcore agenda or your core agenda. So I think honesty and transparency, really, if I had to summarize that, and using data to support wherever possible.
Definitely. I've had a lot of challenges, and especially working with Tara, like how complicated do we get with the message? That really resonated with me. Like, how do I oversimplify, or how deep do I go in? Because it can have, we're talking about really overwhelming things, right? And you don't want people's kind of subconscious defense mechanisms of like avoidance to come in when they're reading it. But you also want to be as transparent as possible to make sure you're communicating what needs to be said. So yeah, that's a challenge for me personally. Okay, so since we talked about AI, the next question is for Lauren. And are there any emerging trends or strategies in climate marketing that marketers should be aware of?
Yeah, so actually I'm looking, there's so much good chat going on. And I know that there was somebody who actually just posted something around this, like around the idea that there's so many tools and free software, like what's the role of marketers anymore? And I think, yeah, on the marketing side, even on the comp side, obviously AI is growing, and it's specifically useful for our industry, from helping us to copy edit to auto generation of cold email campaigns. I mean, it's just like everywhere, to generation of images. As many of you probably already know, like ChatGPT can spit out a really good press release. It's like 60% of the way there in like 2 seconds. I think it's really going to change and transform the way that we do our work. It's going to make it, we're going to be quicker, but I think that also requires that we're taking a beat. We're looking at the copy. I don't know about y'all, but like I have gotten so many more emails, like inbound kind of targeted emails that have like these like pseudo helpful pitches that sound like they're on target for me, but it's clear that they're written by AI. So I think we have to be really careful when we send out those things, that there is a human eyeball taking a look and making sure that we're not just like blasting everybody. I think it's pretty obvious, in my opinion, when something is written by AI or heavily copy edited by AI. Yeah, so just be careful with those tools. Use them. They're great for like the initial brainstorm. They're not great to send to a client or a final product. Another trend I just want to address really quickly, which I'm really excited about on the communication side, is the role in the rise in the amount of climate and clean energy journalists. A few years ago, the New York Times has launched an entire climate desk. Like when I started my career talking to energy media about 15 years ago, I remember the New York Times had like 1 or 2 energy reporters, and maybe they were focused on nuclear. Now there's a whole climate team. There's also so many great niche publications, shout out to like Heat Map, the folks at Canary, Latitude Media. There's just so many good things out there now. And I think that that's a trend that's going to continue, as well as the trend of like niche thought leadership on Substack and other areas as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thought leadership is really important. We're doing a lot of that at Terra, and we use AI when we can, but we have a very stringent fact-checking process, and we also have a very stringent framing process, because how you talk about climate, just the change of a few words can lead to a completely different perception of what you're saying, and it's really important. So Eli, question for you. How important is it for marketers in the climate sector to have a strong understanding of environmental issues?
It's a good question. I think it's important to have an understanding of the environmental issues, but I think it's more important to have a mentality that you can always learn more about it. Like I'm not one to be trumpeting growth mindset everywhere, but I feel like this is a great example of having a growth mindset. You know, our job is to translate some of the tougher things to understand, like climate laws, climate related issues, into the stories and the language that resonates with target customers, and to get them to understand why it's important. So the best way to do that is to learn for yourself why it's important and what we as individuals or companies or states or nations can do about it. So I would say it's important to know the environmental issues and have the background. The deeper that you go, especially depending on, you know, if you work for a solar company, you should probably know all of the ins and outs of how solar panels work and why they're important and why solar energy is important and what the benefit is to the customer as well as to the environment. Um, if I were hiring you as a solar marketer, would not expect you to know that on day one. I would expect that you have an understanding of it and can learn more about it through your time and through your process.
Nice. That's a great answer. I agree 100%. Um, Anusha or Lauren, do you have any difference of opinion, or do you think that's a true statement? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's a true statement. Yeah. And I think it's important, yeah, to you hire for potential. You don't hire for what people have already known and done necessarily. I think like you can know everything about, you know, solar and ERCOT and not know the first thing about, you know, New York battery storage. You know, and you're going to learn. And that's a really exciting thing.
agreed. It's really fun. I think it's really fun as well. So last question from me, but I think it's why everybody's here. So I definitely want everyone to take some time, to answer. So what advice do you have for aspiring marketers who want to break into the climate industry, but lack actual experience in the field? Anusha, you want to go first?
Sure. So I think this is not the be all end all, of course, but I think there are some advantages to coming into this with a little bit of knowledge. So if you have the means to do it, I would say like doing some sort of a crash course. I think this helped me. I did Terra like 3 years ago, and my jargon, my terminology was all B2B tech for the most part, and all the climate language or just like the different subsets inside of climate. I think it was really helpful for me to do that. But I think it's completely okay if this is not an option, right? If you don't want to do this, you don't have the time, you can't afford it, whatever that might be, I think you can still continue to do your own research. Even if it's just focused on your company, your product, or what you're interested in, it's still going to be super beneficial. And I think the second piece that kind of flows from this is when I entered climate, there was just so much, like so many problems, so many solutions, variety of folks working on different things. I think it might be beneficial to narrow down things that interest you. Is it nature-based? Is it deep tech? Is it food-related? Then you can do a little bit more research in that particular area, tailor your experience to that, find companies that make sense in that space, find connections, find the right events that you would like to attend there. And I personally have found networking to be very beneficial, like in-person networking. There's been a lot of that, and I've made a lot of good connections, people I can collaborate with, or people that can introduce me to different things, or I might be able to help them in some way. Also, just a quick point on networking, I think it's best to never expect immediate gratification, of course. You never know when these connections are going to be useful, or you might be useful to them, but keeping them warm is important. A CEO that I once worked for said he was really grateful that he was always very nice to his interns back in the day, because his intern then ended up investing in his startup eventually. So you just never know how these things can play out.
Eli, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, to Anusha's point and to Lauren's point earlier, it's important to recognize that right now and maybe even in the future, you will not know everything about the climate world, and that's okay. As long as you stay curious, as long as you have that growth mindset, as long as you find those opportunities to learn about all of the different options, whether that's through Terra or through all the different thought leadership that's out there, the newsletters, the podcasts. What's important is figuring out why this is important to you and what about this uh, call it arena is what's most compelling to you in terms of the solutions that are present and what you could potentially work on. And something that I kept reminding myself as I was going through the job hunt for a climate job or a climate related job was that I needed to be sure of my skills. I knew I was a product marketer. I knew I had the experience of being a product marketer and could be a good product marketer in this world. Your skills as a marketer will whatever you've been working on for the past however many days will be applicable for working on climate. So just be sure of that and keep that tool belt sharp.
Yeah, agreed. Lauren?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is I would always recommend focusing on your strengths and building off your strengths. So if you're great at media pitching, then focus on that, be really good at that. And then you can parlay that into related sectors. I also think, yeah, that the networking piece is really important. I know as a TerraDo mentor, I've had lots of conversations with people who, just even to like bounce ideas off of people. I also think, there's no substitute for professionalism, attitude, and just being hyper organized. And those skills go really, really far. And yeah, and now is my time. I want to say a plug. I'm actually hiring on our team, marketing and communications associate. So it is on Modern Energy's LinkedIn page as well as on my LinkedIn page as well. So if you're interested, take a look at the FAQs and feel free to apply.
That's amazing. Thank you, Lauren. I want to add on to the networking and just something that I observed. I've been a marketer for 20 years. Networking's always been part of it, but when I was transitioning into climate, I can tell you that I love networking in climate. I did it out of necessity before that, but when you network within climate, like you're meeting these amazing people who are super passionate, and there is this, it reminds me of tech in like the late 90s. There's like this big openness. Like you can just reach out to people on LinkedIn who you've never heard of before, and they're like, hey, I just did this and I really want to learn about what you do. And I would say more than 50% response rate, you will not only get a response, but they'll be willing to get on a call with you. So just be very brave. Like people who are in climate and marketers love to talk about what we're doing. We talk about it all the time. And so, and then people in climate also are very passionate to share what they're doing. So I think don't hesitate. Like when I finished the LFA program, I mean, I wanted to test myself. So there was a climate summit in Miami Beach, which is drivable for me. So I bought a ticket to the climate summit and I went to like I was like, I want to see if I can really speak their language. And I went down the vendor row, right? Because they can't walk away from me. So I literally like went down the vendor row and talked to each one of them about what they were doing to see if I could hold my own and if I felt confident, and I did. And so I just want to recommend to everyone, like networking is the key here. And it's not like the networking you're accustomed to. Like it's really fun and it's really engaging. Okay, so enough of my.
No, that reminds me, I remember there's a big conference called RE Plus. It's one of the biggest industry conferences. And Raleigh-Durham's a fairly small airport, and there was an entire flight going to RE Plus in Vegas. Never mind the flight and the emissions. That's a different for tomorrow. But it was really funny because literally the entire flight was going on this conference, and people were just handing out business cards left, right, and center, and then showing up in Vegas and going to the conference together. So there's always opportunities like that as well when you're least expecting it.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun. Like I can say with certainty, I haven't been this excited about my career since my 20s. I'm just like loving the people I meet, loving the things that everyone's doing. Okay, so now I'm going to do a lightning round because those are always fun. and then we'll go to Q&A from the group. Okay, so lightning round. Favorite, so we're gonna go Anusha, Eli, then Lauren. We'll just go around like that. All right, favorite climate podcast.
So the BBC's Climate Question, it's something that they focus on a specific question every episode, and they cover a broad range of questions from solutions, problems, equity, environmental justice. I've seen like so many different questions there, so I really like that.
Nice. Eli.
I have a confession to make. I'm not a big podcast guy. So I will instead plug what I feel to be like my foundational text when it comes to climate work, and that is Generation Dread by Britt Ray. It focuses on climate psychology and like how you basically wrap your mind around this big problem and how we're going to do something about it. Highly recommend it, especially if you're a marketer, because it'll help you change some people's minds.
Can you say that when it was Generation Dread by
Britt Ray, Britt space Wray.
amazing? I have not heard of that. I'm very excited.
Great
Yeah.
book.
Okay, Lauren, favorite podcast.
Mine is like a super like wonky one. It's Dr. Volts. He's David Roberts. He's a former Vox writer, reporter, was at Canary. He goes really deep dive on really kind of like technical issues, but he explains things so well.
Awesome. So what are the two newsletters that you read most often?
I subscribe to so many. Wish I had the time to like actually sit and read everything. But the ones that I haven't unsubscribed to from yet, I think I have 4 on my list, which I try to read, not every day. Not successful, but collected and read it over the weekend maybe. But I like Bloomberg Green. I also like that podcast, the Bloomberg Green podcast. Axios Generate, the two, I guess everybody is kind of doing this. There's also Climate Tech Rundown from GreenBiz, which is another one I still haven't unsubscribed to, but I think those would be the ones that I am currently have in my inbox.
Nice. Yeah, I did that initially. I subscribed to like every newsletter and then was like, oh my God. And so I had to spend like a couple weeks like paring those down to the ones I really liked.
Yeah.
So Eli, favorite newsletters?
Yeah, I'm also a Volts reader, not a listener, but a Volts reader. Love David Roberts. I am subscribed to Climate Tech VC, which is always interesting because you see, where the money is going in the work on climate. I also subscribe to Bloomberg Green as well as Heat Map. Highly recommend.
Yeah, I love Heat Map. Love them. And Lauren?
Yeah, you guys both mentioned what I was going to say. I love CTVC. It's, I think, now rebranded Sightline Climate.
Yeah.
I also like Utility Dive, and this is really wonky, but I also really enjoy RTO Insider. I think it's very in the weeds. If you ever want to know what happens in the halls of Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, this is your this is your newsletter.
Okay, and then which climate saving technology are you most excited about? The heat pump or the induction stove?
I'm redoing a few things in my house, and both of these are on my list. So I honestly can't pick. I feel like it's a renewably electrify everything strategy for me.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
Eli.
I cook a lot, so I'm intrigued by the induction stove. But my mother I just convinced my mom to get a heat pump, so that's the win I'll take for right now.
Awesome. Yeah, I like the heat pump, but I live in Florida, so I only use my heat like 3 times a year. So, Lauren, what about you?
I like both of these. I have both of these. Love my induction stove. Less so my heat pump because it costs a lot of money to install in the middle of the summer heat. But I also want to put a plug in. There's like this new induction stove that also has a battery in the bottom that they're creating out in San Francisco, a company called Copper. And it's just like the coolest. And it like replaces the need for a whole home generator. So I'm hoping
Wow.
that they become commercial and national. And maybe one day I will get one, or they can send me for free.
That would be great. Yes.
Good shameless plug. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question. So at Terra, we name each of our Learning for Action cohorts after an endangered species. If you were an endangered species, which one would you be?
Probably a beluga whale.
Nice.
I'm a huge fan of red pandas, so I'll say red panda.
Nice. And Lauren?
A loggerhead sea turtle.
Oh, good one. Okay, so Elizabeth, do you need a minute? So I think we're ready to jump into the Q&A portion. Guys, if you have questions, please add them. I'm scrolling through now. It looks like we have a lot. So, but don't hesitate to keep asking. And yeah, are you ready? Do you want?
Yep, I can jump into it. There's a ton of questions. We'll try to get to as many of these as we can. I'm not seeing anything that are directed to any of you specifically. So I'll ask a question, and if you guys just want to jump in if you have a response.
Wait, Elizabeth, you can tell us who you are and where you work and what you're doing.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I'm also a Terra grad. I'm a community ambassador here. I was in the Zebra cohort about a year ago, a little over a year ago, I graduated. And I'm working in climate. I'm working at a startup called EV Energy. I love it. It's fantastic. I'm a growth marketing manager. So I'm like many of you in the chat, but yeah, I made the year-long transition, and I really owe that transition into climate tech to this Terra.2 program, and that's why I'm here today. Anyways, questions. I think this is a good one. For anyone that's studying with Terra right now, how did you leverage Terra.do or any other climate training program to help you land the role you're in right now?
So I can talk to this briefly. Back when I was working full-time at a climate startup, and I had just I was going through Terra when I was still at my AI startup, and obviously 12-week course and working a full-time job, it's hard to keep track of everything. But I think at that point, given that I didn't really have as much climate experience, the thing that was helpful was that, hey, I'm doing this because I want to up my knowledge in this space and really learn about specific things. And this is one way in which I'm going to do that, which I think was a helpful, I might not have direct climate experience, but I'm doing this to better that. But here's tailoring the rest of my experience to fit in with what exactly they were looking for was also beneficial. But I think Terra just helped add to that.
Okay, next question. I'm going to choose this one because I've actually heard this from quite a few people in the marketing space that have a creative background. Coming from an ad agency or brand marketing background with 7 years volunteering in the ocean nonprofit sector, this is coming from Joff as a creative director. I don't see that title or role very often in the climate space. Not seeing a lot of creative conceptual thinking climate marketing roles. What roles or titles or jobs should this type of person be looking for if they want to transition into climate, but they're not seeing creative director or brand marketing related roles just yet? Do any of you have any thoughts on a role that would be a good transition for this type of person?
Yes. So I think part of and I mean, maybe others have different opinions, but maybe part of the reason why you're not seeing these roles is because a lot of these, a lot of the businesses in our industry are fairly early stage. So their first hire, if there is a hire, it's going to be probably more of a generalist type of role, somebody who can kind of wear a lot of hats. And this also speaks to I think Noah Fisher question around advice for marketers who are the sole marketer at their company. So I think that there may be some outsourcing and contracting to somebody who's a brand architect, but a lot of these early stage companies are literally going into Canva and creating their own logo or just one step above that. They're not looking for a whole, or they don't have the budget, even if they were looking for a whole kind of creative redo of their brand. So I think thinking about leveraging that background and bringing it and maybe leveraging it with marketing and communications into a more of a generalist position might be an opportunity. And I'd love to actually connect with that person and chat with you further if you have any, and happy to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just to build, my background is creative, but I'm also a generalist, a marketing generalist, and I'm doing everything in my current role from designing in Canva, editing a random video really quick, writing all email copy, to doing any type of like partnership negotiations, media buying. It's literally everything that you can imagine in one role. And I can see other people nodding right now, being like, yeah, that's the story of my life right now. So you're kind of like a one man woman working band. So yeah, just to be open to more generalist marketing positions and find ways to exercise and show your strengths as the company kind of grows. As someone interested in marketing within the climate tech space, what advice do you have for individuals looking to build a personal brand that aligns with the values of sustainability and environmental stewardship in order to get a climate role?
I can briefly just share some thoughts on this. There's the scientist, Catherine Hayhoe. I don't know who's heard of her or follows her, but there's just one thing that she constantly repeats, which is just keep talking about it. Like she's like, if you want people to pay attention, you just have to keep talking about it. And I think there's always this need to like get it perfect if you want to share something on social, or like it's just going to take 5 days to put it together, and I have to practice what I preach here too. But I think that just talking about it would be a great way to just get in front of the right folks. So as you keep talking about it, you're just going to attract that kind of energy and attention.
Okay, the
Yeah,
next, oh, sorry, you go ahead.
the one thing I'll tag on to it is also talk about it with other people who are talking about it. Like put yourself in, yeah, like put yourself in the community, because you'll learn from everyone around you, and you will also like the dots will continue to connect, basically.
Next question. It seems like one of the main challenges in the climate space right now is storytelling, i.e., framing what's happening to incite action, whether that is a purchase or a download, versus fear. And for businesses, what the benefit is to them so that they can justify investment with their shareholders. Would any of you agree with that statement, or is this a challenge that either any of you here have a story in navigating in any of your marketing work that you've been doing? So again, that's the whole communication challenge of inciting action and kind of leaning on hope in climate messaging versus instilling fear, because I think that we've all learned, and we talk about this a lot, and Tara talks about this a lot, but like fear isn't really the path to action. Fear isn't really the path to inspiring people to get behind your product or your cause, but really it's finding a way to inspire hope with your product.
I would say personally, I'm always telling my clients to focus on the benefits for customers. It's not the fear. It's not the sustainability aspect of it or the responsible aspect of it. Like, you got to do this because this is going to be something. But what is the benefit to them? Like, is it, I don't know, coming back to the age-old B2B things, is it going to save you money? Is it going to increase sales? Like, really tailoring it in that way, I think has been more lucrative from a revenue standpoint than trying to focus on some of these other things. These are table stakes, I think, maybe at this point is another way to look at it. Like, they're just table stakes. It's not something that differentiates you, but it's the benefit to your customer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I fully agree with it. It's something that differentiates you, but I think the point that I've driven home with a couple of customers is like there is a little bit of brand equity when it comes to being sustainable and thinking about the climate. We live in a world where people care about greenwashing and whether or not you're actually taking this seriously. So that's again not the same as like, is it going to save you money? Is it going to help you sell better? But it does. There are certain organizations that take this seriously, because they care about the brand equity side of it.
This one I think will probably resonate with anybody that's had to do any level of like full funnel marketing. Much of today's marketing is about spurring a quick purchase within a fairly linear purchase journey. How have you changed your approach to generate more durable behavior change in a complex and transformational purchase journey? This is a hard one.
I feel like all of us are B2B, where it's a complex purchase journey as it is. So this is more feels like a B2C question, and I don't really have a good answer.
I can say, I think with just my time recently where I've been B2B for a long time, I'm applying a lot of my B2B tactics to my B2C, let's call it customer journey, the flywheel, right? Like I'm doing more thought leadership. I'm making sure we're educating through every stage of the decision process. So yeah, I think it's kind of merging the B2B and B2C tactics.
So I've done a lot of D2C marketing, and in my current role, I'm doing some B2B, but also B2B to C. So it's all of the layers. And I think in my experience, the challenge with D2C just in general is as a small company or a smaller climate initiative, ultimately at the end of the day, what you want is more people subscribed, more people downloading, more people, you want more consumers, right? So you want that conversion. And the fastest way to do that direct conversion in a lot of the work that we do is going to be through like rebates or incentives or like a discount or like some type of free offering. So that's going to be the easiest way to get to that part of the journey. I think some of the things that I've been experimenting with recently is just playing around with different, coming up with different audiences or coming up with, different reasons that you think somebody might be compelled to click or to want to come down your purchase journey. There are going to be people that are interested in something like a discount or a rebate, and there's going to be people that are really, really going to be interested in environmental messaging. I know we're all the people that, like, if we were served something with environmental messaging, we would be likely to come down that funnel, but for others, it's different. So I think it's coming up with all sorts of different types of content and storylines to attract your consumer, but then also being okay with having patience. There is a level of like of awareness messaging that you still have to do, but I think a lot of these climate organizations that are small have really, really small budgets, and there's only so many eyeballs that you can get on your content when you have a small budget. So it's being okay with like patience and like a slow trickle of newcomers coming into your brand or coming into your product or coming into your app. And then building some type of a funnel and building content for all parts of that funnel so that you can keep entertaining them wherever they're at in their journey. But yeah, it's just experimentation. I think you have to be open to experimentation. Another question for professionals looking to transition into climate-focused marketing roles, just top of mind, what key skills or experiences do you recommend they develop to succeed, or even just to like catch the eye of somebody that's going to be looking through resumes?
Yeah, I'm happy to address this. So one thing I actually think is a really valuable thing to have on a resume is some agency experience. I think it's a shorthand for knowing how to work with clients, the professional aspect of it, having deadlines, dealing with different personalities, knowing how to structure a deliverable. I know that a lot of folks may not have that. But like being able to demonstrate this client orientation, even to internal stakeholders, I think is a really valuable thing to show. As well as an orientation to learning and trying to build new things and new skill sets. One last thing I think is the ability to work autonomously and also in a somewhat ambiguous environment. I think especially in our sector, things are constantly changing. There are, regulations changing by the week. There's, new industries coming up. There's new investments. There's a lot happening. So knowing how to navigate that, knowing how to manage up, knowing how to manage down, and showing those skills are really important.
I have a caveat to that question, Elizabeth. I also recommend maybe letting go of the notion a little bit that you're going to get your climate job by putting your resume in to a job that's posted. I think you should keep doing that for sure, and it happens. But I think networking, finding ways to volunteer, because I think some of these climate companies are so small. And you're right, you don't see a lot of the creative jobs posted, and you don't see a lot of the marketing jobs posted, because sometimes these founders don't even know that's what they need. And so with the networking, you're kind of like, they'll be like, oh, we have this problem. And someone will be like, oh, I met this person who does this. Let me call them. I mean, that's really how this, I think, to find something that's like really a good fit. I think that's happening more frequently. So join all the Slack communities. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think jobs are getting posted. I think people are looking at resumes that are coming to the Slack communities faster than they are on like an Indeed or a LinkedIn or something like that. So, and the other thing is like have a pitch. Like after Tara, I wrote like 7 pitches for myself, and depending on who I was talking to, like I knew what I wanted to go into, what I was passionate about, and had like several versions of my pitch. And so depending on who I was talking to in the networking is how I started that conversation. Like, hi, I'm Kristen. I do this. And I do the same things, but my words were tailored for my audience. And yeah, I think definitely keep applying for the jobs, but if you really want this to happen, like put the time in to networking, and like Anusha said, like it's not going to be like you're going to call one person. Do you know what I mean? You're going to talk to several people over several months, and then that month 4, someone you talk to in month 1 is going to ping you and be like, hey, I think we talked, that's how I think the jobs are getting filled right now. Any
And
disagreement?
Oh, I was just going to add one thing, was that something that you mentioned around volunteering a little bit. And I think nonprofits are always looking. There are a lot of climate nonprofits, and they're always looking for some help. A short stint, 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks would be helpful to just also build your knowledge in the space and get some experience doing maybe like a branding project, or just tailoring it as a project would be a good way to get some experience if you're completely new to the climate work.
And nonprofits are always looking, and they're not always posting, right? So you just can reach out to them and be like, hey, I do this. I'm looking for some experience. Do you want some help? And they're pretty responsive.
Especially if you're offering free help, they will be.
Yes.
I'm just noticing the time. So it's 2:59. I think we're wrapping up soon. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So do we want to do one more question, or should we do a final sign off? What do you think, Kristen?
Can you guys stick around for one more question?
Of course.
Okay.
Nice.
I'm going to ask this one. I think it's a good one. Career related, transitioning into climate. Looking back, if any of you made a switch into the climate space, what would you say was the most difficult part about making that switch? And what learning did you have from going through that difficulty?
I have an answer that I said it earlier, but it was challenging for me, and I had to put a lot of effort into building a new skill set. But I come from tech, come from fast growth, investor driven, hit numbers, do or die. I had to learn that skill set of learning that the people who come from like a policy background or come from an academic background weren't understanding what I was saying. Like I was either like stressing them out or frustrating them with kind of the way I was bringing information to the table. And I wasn't, I don't know how to explain it. I got some coaching from one of the people that I'm working with, because I was like, I need to better build these relationships. And so learning to listen and learning to reframe what you're doing. So it's not just numbers and money and revenue, right? Like you have to reframe what your marketing campaigns are doing and why you're doing them and what's driving them and the impact to the customer. It's a little bit, it's not hard to do. I just had to learn to do it, if that makes sense.
Anyone else have any memories of something that was really difficult that you overcame in the transition to climate?
Yeah, I started my job a month before everything shut down during COVID and everything went remote. And going from a team of, 20 plus communications, marketing professionals at a big public university to a very small role or one team role, I think there was a lot of learning that had to happen. And it's also like it was an opportunity to just roll up my sleeves and also realize that like just because something doesn't fit your role doesn't mean you don't, it doesn't mean you don't have can't not do it. So everything from supporting COVID policy rollouts to, especially on a small team, like everyone needs to pitch in. So that was definitely a learning journey for me.
Yeah, it's an all hands on deck sort of thing, and really stoked to see everybody here trying to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Elizabeth, do you have any, I think there's some wrap up info and then we can let everyone go.
Yes, so if you all look at the chat, there's a lot of activity in there, but I have copied and pasted the rest of the events that we have going today. There's also more events happening tomorrow, so check out the group chat for all of those links. And of course, if you are not a graduate and you have not experienced Tara's Learning for Action program, there are links to explore more offerings through Tara. All of us are graduates. Several of us on the call have made career transitions because of what we learned through Tara. It's a really great program. And if you have any questions about it, I'm sure you can hit up any of us. I'm just giving the invite on LinkedIn. So DM us and I'm sure that we'd be happy to share our stories.
Yeah, I'll second that. Don't hesitate to reach out. Maybe give us a little bit of time if we get swarmed with messages after this, but that's one of the other things I love about climate is that everyone is very active in helping other people get into climate. Do you know what I mean? Like we all had a lot of help. We had a lot of support from different communities, and there's a strong willingness to kind of help more people come. One, because we are a lot of one-man shows and we're really busy and we could definitely use help. But also just because I think everyone working in this space right now is incredibly passionate about it and always happy to welcome more passionate people into the fold. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.